Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me in the locker room. I'm Alan Locher. Actor turned therapist William Bumiller is here tonight to help kick off Mental Health Awareness Month and look back at his time on Guiding Light. Guiding Light fans will remember him for his role as Sean McCullough, Reva's island guy when Annie left her to die on the plane. In addition to his role on Guiding Light, Bill has appeared on an incredible amount of hit primetime series, including Mork and Mindy, Wings, The Golden Girls, The Nanny, Ellen, Chicago Hope, Judging Amy, and so much more. Bill went back to school and earned his graduate degree in psychology from Pepperdine University and is currently specializing in marriage and family therapy. He will tell us about his work today with a broad spectrum of clients to help streamline and improve their communication skills to assist in resolving any relational issues, be they intimate, familial, or work-related. Please help me welcome to the locker room my friend, Bill Bumiller. Hey, Billy.
Hey, Alan.
So good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, good to see you too. Nice intro. I want to be that guy.
Well, you are that guy. You are that guy. And this is so long overdue. We were just talking about your son, Liam. What has fatherhood meant to you for these 18 years?
Well, in short, the biggest learning experience of my life. It's something I'm grateful to be able to convey to clients that are going through the same thing. It's a rough ride. The best part for me was when he was little and I could pick him up and carry him in my arms, and I was the god of his world, if you will, and the apple of his eye. And we went everywhere together. We had a lot of fun. And then, it's painful when they start to get older and want to have their own friends. You want to be able to let them go and still try to maintain a relationship. So it's been challenging, and really a steep learning curve. I've learned a lot from it. I feel like I'm a better person as a result of it.
Well, hopefully. He's a lucky guy to have you as his dad.
Yeah, thanks.
Dayton, Ohio, right?
Yeah.
What were you like as a child?
Pretty precocious, and a bit of a hellraiser, if you will. I didn't do very well in school. In grade school, I was very popular, and then had kind of a difficult time in high school up until my senior year. But I excelled in sports for the most part. Was a runner, and tried to get on the field of the football team, but there was a lot of cliques going on there, so it was more social than anything else. But I did really well as a sprinter. I was a 440 guy.
Oh, wow.
But on my off time, I had lots of pets, which I still have new pets today. Got my half of the twin of my Siamese cats back there on the bed behind me.
Oh, yeah.
That's Nusha. She likes to hang out for sessions, so she's always around.
I love that. When you first left high school, did you have a career path in mind? Was acting already in your eyesight?
No, not at all. I actually, when I went to college at Ohio University, I really had nothing of any more interest than to get good grades. Finally, I really wanted to test my intellectual abilities, which I did. I got on the dean's list, but then my current girlfriend at the time, her father had offered me a job in business, so I picked a business major, which was definitely not for me. It was macroeconomics and microeconomics. So the second year, I started to really do poorly. Though I excelled socially, I joined a fraternity, Sigma Phi Epsilon, and the rugby team did super well. The rugby team played first string. It was a club, and so we traveled all over the place in Ohio, Bowling Green, all over Ohio, and played everywhere, and did really well. We won the Mid-American Conference the year that I started.
Oh, wow. So how did acting come your way?
Well, so the grades went downhill. Spring break was coming up, and it was only partying for me my junior year. So I went home, and my dad was kind of soul searching as well to figure out what he wanted to do. He wasn't feeling all that great about the ministry anymore. So we both took a class at the UD, Dayton University, from some guys that taught out of Antioch University. Mm-hmm. If they have one in Yellow Springs there. They have one out here in Los Angeles too, which I did finish up my college degree at many years later. But it was a course on career assessment and skill evaluation with a book called What Color is Your Parachute? And it was basically pushing away all the can't do that, couldn't do that, and imagining in a perfect world what you would love to do and what skill sets you had to promote that. And it turned out through all of our machinations that I wanted to be a Hollywood stuntman. So I went back to school with that, and Ohio University gratefully had a place or a department where if you didn't have the college that met those career goals, you could develop your own programming. So I did that and took acting classes. That was great. Did some theater there, a lot of theater there. Took calculus so that I could study trajectories if I wanted to do a motorcycle jump. Kinesiology for self-healing and understanding of the human body. And it all worked into what was going to be a graduate degree, an undergraduate degree. But at the end of 4 years, I had about 15 credits left to finish, and I was just ready to go. So I packed up my stuff that summer, 1978, and hightailed it out to California.
That's incredible. I remember the stuntman. Did you get to do stunts?
I was hired. I did a bunch of stunts. Yeah, I did a lot of my own stunts in the films that I did. I was hired once to be a stuntman for a Jeep commercial where I rode a buffalo. If any of the fans might remember that commercial, you can actually Google it and pull it up. And we shot 2 of them, one in Texas, which was miserable. And the second one was actually the one you can see, a much better production value. We shot that in the back lot at Universal Studios, where they shot Back to the Future. And that was a fantastic commercial. But I got hired as a horseman because I have horse skills. I'm an equestrian, or was an equestrian. I still ride, but to ride at a full gallop on the back of a real buffalo and do a lift up, it's called, where I reach down at probably about 25 miles an hour, grab a stunt girl and flip her up on the back of the buffalo behind me. That's what I was hired to do.
That's incredible. You arrived, you said 78 to LA?
Yes, late 78.
And 1980, you got Mork and Mindy.
Yeah, pretty quickly. It was a time when you could get in pretty quick. It's not like that now, but yeah, it was very, very open in Hollywood.
What do you remember about that first role?
How crazy Robin Williams was, even hitting on my fiance at the time when she came to the recording studio, and how embarrassed I was when I saw myself on television for the first time in a room full of friends. I broke into a sweat like I've never felt before. The only time I've ever sweat like that was when I had 105 fever.
Wow.
And they edited a whole bunch of stuff.
I love that. You were that nervous having them.
It wasn't that I was so nervous. It's just that when I saw myself on television, it was the first time I'd ever really seen myself in a medium like that. And it was, I don't know, kind of shocking for some reason.
I love that. I wish Mork and Mindy was available. I would love to see it.
Yeah. He was. I
watched it back then, but God knows. And I just watched your Golden Girls episode with Estelle Parsons in the elevator. Was that fun?
Oh yeah, she is spry and as funny on camera, off camera as she is on camera. She's a hoot. She was the spit and vinegar of that whole bunch. She's the tiniest little thing. But man, she is a force of nature.
I mean, that show lives on. You around the world.
I still get checks. 75 cents here, $1.25 there.
It costs
actually,
more.
I take that back. That show actually pays pretty well, so because it's so popular.
Oh, really? It depends on
Yeah,
the popularity of it.
yeah, and the channels that it runs on.
Oh, well, and it runs everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, everybody. Um, as I said in the intro, you appeared. The Nanny, Golden Girls, Mork, Wings, L.A. Law, Ellen, Blossom. Do you have a favorite that you appeared in for primetime series?
Well, I loved working on the Nanny because Fran Drescher was a friend at the time, and so was Peter. I went to acting class with Daryl Hickman with Peter, and Peter is just hilarious, and he's got more talent in his little finger than than any performer that I've ever met.
I wish I knew that because I had him on a while ago.
Did you?
But you know who I just had on, and we were talking about you, is Richard Beekins, who you did Love, Valor, and Compassion with.
Yes, yeah. Well, that was absolutely my favorite stage performance. That I had wanted to work at the Geffen Theater for as long as I can remember. It was the eventuation of a lifelong dream, as was working in New York for a year. Those two things were somewhat of a pinnacle of my career. Plus, I was able to travel over. I went to Europe a couple of times to shoot movies, boat trip in Cologne and all up and down Greece. And before that, I did this little scene. They called it a maxi series. It was from some soap opera folks that shot in Italy. We were all over Italy shooting. We were up in Monaco and mostly in the center of Italy.
Well, that doesn't sound Greece.
Yeah, it was great, especially when you're on the studio's dime. There's no living like when everyone else is paying for it.
Well, that is absolutely for sure. Cassie had said William Bumiller was also in a movie of the week during the time he was on Guiding Light. It was called Moment of Truth, where he played a coach who raped a track star. Susan Blakely from Rich Man, Poor Man played the girl's mother. It wasn't easy to watch, even though he is really easy on the eyes. Needless to say, he played a character the polar opposite of Sean on Guiding Light.
Well, I had a crush on Cassie for a while too. She is absolutely stunning. Still to this day, she looks beautiful. Every time I check her out on whatever show I see her at the gym.
Oh, General Hospital. No, this was from the fan, not Laura. You're thinking Laura.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Fan Cassie. I thought you meant the actual Cassie.
Sorry. Yes, you're right. Both same name. Yeah, Laura's on General Hospital, kicking butt for sure.
Yeah, she's a powerful performer.
Absolutely. Take me back. What do you remember about auditioning for Guiding Light? And is New York City what drew you to that part?
No, not at all. And I didn't audition.
Oh, love that.
So just going back a little bit to this track coach raping his athletes, I called my brother and I said, "Hey, Mark, good news, bad news." And he said, "Okay, give me the good news." I said, "Well, the good news is, I'm sorry, good news, bad news." He says, "Give me the bad news." I said, "Well, I just got a part where I'm a rapist." And he said, "Really? Okay, what's the good news?" And I said, "Well, it's not young boys." So we take what we can. That actually turned that, though that is very difficult to watch. She and I, the actress that played, I've forgotten her name. I'm sure you know it because she was in all of the.
Susan Blakely.
No, the young girl that played the.
I'm gonna look that up.
She was in, the dinosaur movies.
I'm gonna look it up. Ariana
Richardson, yeah. So she was just, 14, 15 years old, just a really sweet girl. The director had no clue what to do with us, so we put it in my lap, and it was the first scene that we shot. Sometimes that happens in movies. You go to the intimate stuff right away before you even get to know the person. And I think sometimes they do that because of scheduling, and other times they do it because they don't want the people to get to know each other and not like each other at some point. So we start fresh, but they started with this scene. That was the first scene we shot, was the rape scene. The director just had no idea what to do with it. And so I took her aside and we choreographed it to within an inch of its life. So we knew exactly what we were doing, what she was comfortable with, what I felt good about. And the director just followed us, and the cinematographer just set up the shots to comply with what our choreography was. And we were laughing and tickling each other between takes. For as horrible as that looks, Ariana and I had the best time shooting that scene. It was a laugh riot. It was all we could do to straighten up to get the scene rough, just kind of the back scenes aspect of that.
It's wild because today they would have an intimate, I think it's called an intimate coach or something, an intimate.
Oh, yeah. It would have been strictly regulated.
Yeah.
And so my agent at the time was great at selling people. And because I was on set shooting something and also scheduled to go home in a couple of months to shoot a non-union film, kind of an indie film, my agent began pitching me and selling me to, I'm gonna have to remember all these people's names. The director, the major producer at Guiding Light.
Paul Roush.
Paul Roush. So thank you. You'll be my memory here as mine fades. Paul Roush. So they were on the phone going back and forth, and he's sending me pictures, and I think he was able to get some rushes of some of the work. And Paul just fell in love. He went nuts. And they were only hiring me for this short little thing down in the Keys, which is what started the whole thing off. I think in Soapland they call it a remote. And so I went down and did the remote. He was very impressed by all of the work. And Reva and I, of course, not only had eyes for each other on camera, but we had it off camera. We really hit it off terrifically. And I believe that what really got, because it was only, just a few shows that were going, it was both the fan popularity, the way that the character hit the fans, and also I think Reva was insisting that she have someone to work with to play off of for at least another couple of episodes. So that kind of got me in.
I didn't remember that just supposed to be the Keys and not returning to Springfield.
Not originally, yeah. It was just a short hire.
Wow. I mean, that's not a bad place either to shoot, right?
Oh, no, it was great. It was fantastic. And I took a car back up and stayed in Miami for a couple of days. And that drive across that huge bridge that's only surrounded by water was just fantastic.
Well, let's take a look.
Oh, okay.
Never heard anyone talk much. How does Joshua stand it?
Joshua?
You keep talking to someone named Joshua. Must be one hell of a patient guy to put up with you.
You know something? You've got some nerve. Not only are you a peeping Tom, but you're an eavesdropper too. You have been listening in on my private, personal talking.
Does this Joshua ever get a word in edgewise?
You know what? Stuff it.
Never meant for any of this to happen. It's all gone haywire. You barge into my life, make me feel things I'd forgotten, things that I never want to feel again. Everything was fine before you came here.
First of all, I love the fact that she crashed, onto the island and survived without a bruise.
Well, yeah, I rescued her from the water, if you remember that. I swam out in what turned out to be maybe 4 feet deep water, so that at the first couple of, and I did it without a rehearsal. So the first couple of strokes were fine, but then I realized that I could actually push with my feet as well, and I looked like an Olympic swimmer because I was under the water like a duck. I was pushing with my feet on the bottom of the shore.
Well, and you two definitely hit it off from the get-go.
Yeah, we did.
I mean, what was it like? What do you remember working opposite Kim?
How giving she was, how really professional and insistent upon the work and good work, prepared. She's I would have to say, one of the best actresses I've worked with. And just a force of nature, really strong. It was clear how she could really hold a show up like that for so many years.
Amen to that. Had you
Have
ever
you had her on the show?
Yeah, a lot.
A couple times.
She's done it. We had her and her son, because her son is now acting. Her youngest is doing a lot, and they recently did a film together. She has a small role in it, a funny comedic that is with Ewan McGregor and Ewan McGregor's daughter, called Bleeding Love. It's based on Ewan's daughter, her relationship with her father, and they're friends with Kim's son. So that's how it all came together. But she spends most of her time with her grandchildren these days. She's got like 5 or 6.
Wow. Wow. Good for her.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Had you ever watched a soap before doing one?
Yeah, I'd actually been out to New York a couple times, actually auditioning for soaps way back in the beginning of my career. Then at the time when I first started, it wasn't as acceptable as it is today, even to do commercials. You were either a serious actor or you did commercials and soaps, which turns out to be anything but the truth. But that was just the perspective that Hollywood at the time had, casting agents and directors. That all changed over the years. But I did fly out very early in my career to test for, I think it was All My Children.
I think it
was All My Children.
And then when you came back to town, you worked with Laura and Wendy Moniz and Frank Grillo.
When I came back to New York, yes.
Yeah, right. When you came back after the Keys.
Yeah, worked with the whole crew. Yeah, here we are. Boy, and Wendy and Frank have done great for themselves too, haven't they?
They have, yeah. They have. I love her on Yellowstone.
Yeah. And his work has been pretty impressive too. I thought he was fantastic in The Gray. I was just really taken aback. He really hit his stride in that movie.
Oh, I need to check it out. I don't think I've seen it.
And then he did something. I meant to look this up beforehand because I thought we might talk about him. He did something that I believe he produced, which was him being a taxi and or Uber driver kind of a thing.
Oh, I don't know.
Where it's just really him and this other fairly well-known actor as well. He kind of gets, his character kind of gets hijacked into something and is trying to get out of it, but it's all shot just in the cab, the interior of the taxi itself, which I can't even explain how difficult that is to do and or would be to do. And to hold an audience just in that small space really takes a talent. And both of these guys really delivered for that. I was super impressed, blown away, actually.
Wow. Yeah, he's done so many things that I have not seen enough of. I wanted to see the series Kingdom that he did, but that was, I think, originally on DirecTV. It was sort of, I think, a boxer. I think he played a boxer in in that. I think it was with one of the Jonas Brothers a couple of years ago, but it was only on Direct. But he has worked basically nonstop. From when he hit the ground. That one of the fans, Travis, had said here, 1 second, I was going to read it. I enjoyed Mr. Bumiller on GL as Sean and as Martin on Passions. He embodied both roles with sensuality, mystery, and vulnerability. Impressive traits. What do you remember about playing Martin on Passions?
That was a short hire too, but they kept adding things to it. I think they hired me for just a couple of episodes maybe a dozen at first, and then rehired me, kind of the same as Guiding Light. They had me in a beard. I was a guy that had died previously, but then mysteriously came back to life. So at first they thought I just looked like him, but then it came to be that I was working with him. I was him, and the mystery then ensued. It was
as
fun.
it does in daytime.
As it does in daytime. So it was fun. It was a good group to work with. Not as dynamic as hard to repeat Guiding Light. Hard to repeat that experience. But
you and I had a great time flying to Michigan to see Kim on stage.
Yeah, and she was terrific as well.
Blood Brothers, I think. Blood Brothers. Did anything surprise you about doing soaps since you came from primetime and movies?
Well, the work ethic surprised me. I love rehearsals. I mean, for me, it was surprising in that it was basically doing mini plays throughout the day. We got a rehearsal in the morning, and then we shot it, and it had a real grittiness feel to it because it was so live. So sometimes things happened that weren't rehearsed, and that was really fun. I like that kind of spontaneity. It's some of the things that's happened on stage, with the confidence of having some rehearsal and getting the kinks out. So I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it.
It's completely different.
Is it? How so?
Because of money, they barely rehearse. The rehearsal, I think, takes place mainly actors maybe running lines in their dressing room. They are moving at a warp. I mean, I thought soaps, you shot a show a day. That's still pretty fast. Now some of them are shooting 6 shows in a day or in a week, or 7 shows a week.
Wow.
Yeah. To save money. It's kind of nuts, I think, how they do it. But
that's fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, even then, really had to be on our game. Really had to, know your lines, know what you're doing, come with some ideas, try them out, and expect Paul to cancel them.
He was a character, wasn't he?
He sure was. Yeah.
But you hit it off with him.
I liked him a lot. Yeah. The hiring process was basically a conversation on the phone. They arranged a call when I was still up in Vancouver shooting this miniseries, and he was great. He ended the call with "Keep working out." He just wanted me to look good.
He wanted you to be shirtless on the island.
Yeah.
That's so funny. That didn't happen often, where they just called somebody on the phone and say you got it. Absolutely. One fan, Boomer TV Memes, says, "Can you share memories of working on Judith Krantz's Secrets with Peggy Lipton and Jamie Lynn Bauer?" Do you remember?
Yeah, that was the one that we shot over in Italy, in Milan, for 6 months.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a real continental cast. Derek DeLint was in it, and Peggy Lipton, who I was really enamored of because she was in the series that I watched when I was a kid.
Mod Squad, right?
Yeah, Mod Squad cop show. And she was an item back then. She still looked pretty good when we were shooting in Milan too. And there was a scene there where I tied her up and was supposed to be torturing her, and was really dark stuff. And we had fun doing that too, as well.
I think I watched a little too.
They had a lot of money for that production. The producers really brought whomever was signing on to it to the table, because we had lavish sets up in Monaco. We were up in Monte Carlo. We worked in Rai Due, which is the studio over there in Milan, and they pulled out the stops. I had 2 free plane tickets to fly anybody over twice that I wanted to, per diem, which is usually what they do with movies that are on location. But they spent a lot of money on us.
It was a primetime mini series, right?
I mean, I'm surprised that he watched it. Maybe it has subsequently aired somewhere over here. It was first aired. I was getting a lot of fan mail from people over in France, Italy, Holland,
Oh, wow.
Germany. So that's where they first released it. I don't think the intention was to release it here at first, but then if he's seen it, it's either, gone to some streaming service, which wouldn't surprise me. It was pretty good from what I could see of the rushes and or of the episodes that they finished that I saw.
After Mork and Mindy, did you ever watch yourself again?
Oh, well, not for a while. And if I did, I could only be critical of it.
Okay.
So it's only as I've moved on where I've been able to look back and say, okay, that was okay. That was all right. I could have done this. I could have done that.
Travis was asking about, participating in Love, Valor, and Compassion. Now it lives on in film since they made a movie. How do you feel about what that show and film sort of represent for people who are gay?
Well, I think it seemed to me as though it was the beginning of, the acceptance, the embracing of the culture. And I was fairly deeply ensconced within it. Every director I had that was of any merit, unfortunately, died of AIDS. Bill Hudnut was I consider my best comedy coach, and he was really prominent out here. He died of AIDS. My first, and not that this show was about that, but just about the difficulties of what was happening during that time period, just prior to when we made it. And so I really not only felt good about where I was doing it, the Geffen Theater, but what I was doing, that play. I thought the play was just terrific.
I had seen it in New York.
Yeah, and we had a few of the New Yorkers come to do it. And it's where I met Mario Cantone, who I immediately fell deeply in love with. And still to this day, just absolutely adore him. He is the funniest man on the planet, bar none.
I love that.
That's saying something, because John Lovitz was the first comedian that I really hung out with in a friendly way in my first movie that I did over on Catalina Island. And it was a low budget production. So this was before John and Phil Hartman, who was also on the show. We took a hiatus, and they came in a helicopter and flew them to LAX, and they went to audition for Saturday Night Live, came back and found out on the island while we were still shooting that they had got it. So, but John Levis and I were cabined together in this kind of like makeshift lean-to that we slept in sleeping bags. And so every night before we go to bed, he would try out his comedy stuff on me, leaving me hysterically laughing so hard that it would just lull me off to sleep. He is a hilarious guy. Mario tops him 100%.
Mario's very funny.
Yeah. And a great guy. Super great guy.
Well, let's switch gears. What led you to psychology and making this transition?
A lot of time on my hands. A yearly dream where I was in high school, running to try and finish a class to get my diploma. To graduate from high school is a nightmare, basically, that I had a couple times a year. And so I finally decided that I would go back and finish my undergraduate just to get that out of the way, something to do, to test my academia, and loved it more than I'd ever remembered. And so once I graduated with an undergraduate degree a co-degree in writing and psychology, I thought, well, why not get a master's degree just to keep doing it? I had the money, I had the time. So within Pepperdine's graduate program, there's a requirement that you actually do some hands-on as part of the licensing or the graduation requirements, that you do some hands-on counseling. So it's a practicum basically. And so I did that, and just absolutely adored it, thought it was fantastic, and thought that what I would do was, because I knew someone else who'd done the same thing, be an actor and also on my free time do counseling. Well, it turned out I did act for a number of years into my counseling life, but I got so busy as a therapist that I had little or no time to go on auditions, because at the time we were still having to run all over the city, so I couldn't make auditions. And then my theatrical agents retired, so I was left with just a commercial agent, and I just kind of naturally transitioned into it.
When you started to go for the masters, did you really think you would do it as a profession?
I dabbled with it. I was more interested in the academic progress than anything else. Psychology had always interested me. And I think that is a function of how I approach my acting work, by studying characters, because I wasn't method, but for one character that I was just doing a scene for in class, I actually went down into the streets of Los Angeles, rubbed grease and mud on my face, changed my clothes to some clothes that I found in the dumpster, and went out on the street and pretended to became a homeless person to see what that was like, so I could bring whatever I found from it to the work that I was doing in class. So I've always been fascinated by other people and what makes them tick, and
it's fascinating doing this show for the last 4 years. How many actors have studied psychology as majors at some point in their life, either before or after? It's just amazing, but I think it really is about that connection with people.
Yeah, and an understanding that people are different and varied, and how they get that way, which brings more acceptance. And the difficult thing about playing characters is that there are flaws in every character, and to be able to accept them and move into them is more helpful in the portrayal of them than anything else. So at least for me, it created, or maybe it started there, a non-judgmental aspect about people in general. And that's very helpful in psychology.
Well, as I told you backstage, I always found it so easy to talk to you. So I can only imagine that your patients must find it pretty easy as well, or you make it easy for them to open up.
And I found it easy to talk to you, Alan. So I imagine that's why you're doing well in what you're doing too. It's all about talking.
You must have been really proud, like saying you struggled so much in school, when you were younger, but to accomplish these later in life. I mean, going back to school isn't easy. I couldn't even imagine that. That's awesome. And you must be, proud of yourself, because that's quite an accomplishment, not just finishing one degree, but getting the other degree as well.
Well, thank you. I still have my eye on a PhD, so I haven't given that up totally, except for the expense. I'm not sure I want to shell out that kind of cash just for a doctor's title. And also, people call me doctor anyway. Even if I try and convince them, no, I'm not a doctor, they call me doctor regardless.
Dr. Bumiller, I love it.
It still chases me a little bit, the impression that I got from high school that I wasn't really all that bright. I actually, when Joe Montello, the director of Love, Valor, Compassion, got very frustrated with me at one point, he did make a sotto voce comment that Bill is not the sharpest knife in the drawer. Those kind of things still chase me. To some extent, I think it's the best.
Yeah, I mean, hearing those things stick with us, don't they?
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah. So that still chases me a little bit, but I've kind of given it up. I get a lot of good response from people about what I present in the office, how I help them, how I move them forward in their relationships, and so that's very gratifying. And I feel good about that. I'm not sure that there's that much self-pride or being proud of myself going on there, but I think that might be a Midwestern thing, Alan. You know, you can take the boy out of the Midwest, but you can't take the Midwest out of the boy. We're very humble out there.
Well, but I applaud you for sure, because it's a big deal to do that at a, later in life and to accomplish it, let alone. You see individual patients and couples. Is it of all ages?
Yeah, in the beginning, I saw all ages, even kids as young as 4 and 5 years old. Now, I do have a 12-year-old in my practice at this point, but so teenagers come in once in a while, but it's mostly adult individuals and a lot of couples. I have an online presence, but my practice is predominantly referral based. So that's the good news. I have a lot of happy customers that tell their friends and keep the business going. It's a very competitive business, and so I'm lucky to be doing well in it. I've done very well over the 20 years.
20 years. Wow. I mean, it doesn't feel like I know it's 20 years, but it doesn't feel like we haven't, seen each other in 20 years. It's just crazy. Yeah.
And I really only know it because my son's 19, and I think, okay, yep, that's the math. Because I started when he was born, basically. I was going to school, just finishing up my degree when he plopped into the world.
The pandemic had such an effect on so many, kids for sure, couples, as we were talking, who were, left to being opposite each other. What are most of the struggles you see today? Like, what is the biggest issue facing clients per se? Is it communication?
It's where I find to be the most, it's not necessarily the main issue that they're having. I do just find that once communication is cleared up, there's a lot that follows within that, because the communication style has a lot of deep listening into it rather than argumentation, if you will. And that's not easy. We are socialized to listen passively, building our own assessment of what the other person is saying, and then coming back with our feelings about it. And that leaves the individual who's speaking relatively unheard, if not completely unheard. And so using active listening or reflective listening, and first starting with repeating back to the person what they got from what you were saying, creates an empathetic exchange and a bonding that can happen within that for couples, rather than pitting them as opposites or opponents against each other. We want to work from a teamsmanship place where we're really deeply, patiently, non-judgmentally trying to understand one another. And in that pursuit, people get more intimate. I love Brene Brown's TED Talk on vulnerability, because it's so if you haven't heard it, I strongly recommend it to all the viewers. It's what put her on the map. She's done a bunch of things since then, but she did a 20-minute TED Talk years ago now, where she speaks on vulnerability, which is basically the idea that vulnerability is an uncomfortable place to be. So we just have to become familiar with it, because it's requisite for intimate connection. So I've got to keep and maintain a safe space to be vulnerable with the other person. And John Gottman speaks about that too, who is the guru of couples therapy. He's the one that has the 4 horsemen of no name calling, no character assassination, no inside information, and no calling in the troops. Those are no-nos in communication land, because they pit us against each other and create defensiveness. And as soon as I create defensiveness, I've doubled my work. I can't really get through to my partner the message that I want to convey.
That's interesting. Thinking of feeling heard isn't, I think, just in, couples who are together. I feel like it's, us as, kids, feeling hurt by your parents at times.
Yeah, all relationships can benefit from being able to really deep listen to another person and take them in non-judgmentally, ask good leading questions. It was a great podcast that came out, and a book that the person who was being interviewed had written. It's called Super Communication, or Super Communicators. And the podcast was on Point LA. And I don't know if you have links, but I can certainly send it to you if any of the readers are interested. He basically defines, the book is terrific, but he defines communication in 3 separate arenas: social communication, practical communication, and emotional communication. The latter of which, of course, is the one that we really want to engage in with our intimate partners and people intimate in our lives, because emotion is the glue that connects all of us, truly. We will stay together through thick and thin through any actions that the other person takes, even if they're infringing on our rights or feelings, as long as we can stay emotionally connected to one another.
Wow. Well, I don't know if this is even accurate, but what's the most difficult aspect of what you do?
Getting people to try it out, to try something new. It's really hard because it requires, to some extent, if you and I are in an exchange and you have an issue with me and the languaging puts me on the defense, then I'm going to want to defend myself, and then you need to escalate to make sure you get your point across. Now I'm still defending and we get nowhere. So when I have a couple in the room, as I did just earlier today, what one person is really aggressively trying to explain the difficulty, the feelings that they're having based on the other person's actions, that creates defensiveness. He gets defensive. We don't get the sense that she doesn't get the sense, or he doesn't get the sense that there's any listening going on at all. So that's just a circular causality that perpetuates it. So the hardest thing is getting someone to pause their feelings, not forget them, because we can't just focus on one person's feelings, but pause. We'll just call it first come, first serve. The first person that offers their feelings, we start with them, and then we do the reflection, the validation, and the repair of the hurt feelings. And that makes room for then the other one who's having feelings to be able to express their feelings. So it's somewhat like taking turns, because otherwise we just have this cacophony of, well, you did this, well, I did this, you did that. Well, I didn't do that, you did that, and that's what caused me to do that. Oh, yeah? And it just goes on like that.
Spirals out of control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we put the whole thing aside, and as the couple does, and goes through the motions until we hit those emotional moments, and then it all comes back up again, and it frays relationships.
I feel like today, with all of the divisiveness, the communication element is the, and not only the divisiveness, but technology being in the way of people communicating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the highest form of communication is person to person. Next best is what we're doing here through virtual. Third is when I can hear your voice. Fourth is email, and the worst is text message, which is a major form of communication for lots of folks. And it lacks the fundamental first language that we have, and that's all meta communication, nonverbals. Because
you don't get tone, right?
You don't get tone, you don't get eye contact, you don't get facial countenance, you don't get gesticulation, you don't get body language, you don't get you don't get pauses, you don't get all the things that is our first language. That's how we first learn to communicate. That's the language that we trust, is what we hear and see coming from the other person. Because I can say, I love you, or I can say, I love you. And those mean two completely different things. Same language, same writing, words put together in a sentence, different meaning. So it's important to have that as much as possible. And yes, and going back to what you said, what they're finding is in these small focus groups, if you will, where they get, in this case, we'll say Republicans and Democrats together, that come together to really be there to understand one another, they come away with less argumentative and discord to one another. And they don't necessarily switch their sides, if you will, the sides of the aisle, but they now understand where that other person is coming from and respect it more. And that, I believe, is what's missing, because I don't think the lack of communication is happening just in my backyard, in my office. It seems to be preponderant around the world.
Oh, 100%. And I think, looking back at that, left and right during the 2016 election, I think there was just so much anger that people never spoke. And I'm probably in that boat, but I do think we have to listen to each other to understand one another. There's just, no surviving, I think, us as a humanity if we're not going to do that. When we look at what's happening around the world, sadly.
Yes, absolutely. I offer at least to my clients that if in my communication I make two things penultimate, prioritize them. The first one being, of course, that I want my message to get through. And that of course, we can all align with, right? I want my message to get through to you. The second thing that I have to hold right next to it, if not equal to it, is keeping the person that I'm talking to feeling safe. And look how those two things work together. That if my partner, let's say, is feeling safe while I'm speaking to him or her, then my message is going to get through. Because if they don't feel safe, they will become defensive. And now I double my work. I have to work past defensiveness to get my message through. So hold those two as priorities in communication, and we will do much better.
Yeah, I used to see a therapist a long time ago. I credit that probably for the reason I'm, together for 17 years.
It's an accomplishment.
But it's also, I think somewhat it is that communication or feeling safe, because, I know there were things early on in how I reacted, which is probably my reactions, I think, came from my mom, seeing how she reacted to things.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's our first model.
Correct. And Ray used to get worried that he would, I'm going to share it. He used to say, oh, there's the face, like it would just be my reaction of some sort. Mm-hmm. And years into it, he said, it's gone, which is, I have to attribute to him, but I know that some of, as I said, my mother was a Holocaust survivor, she was very sort of high strung, which you can understand, her world was, turned upside down. And, but I think, and I think it's proven that, second generation has trauma from that.
It is. I have clients who experience the same thing.
It felt good, years later when he said he didn't see the face anymore, but I think that's just, coming together and finding that ease with, your spouse, whoever that is, your partner.
Yeah, right. Feeling safe. And so, yes, our first concepts of what relationship looks like and what interaction looks like comes from our parents. That's in us. So we have to surmount that in ways that are more successful. And in specific, learning how to be responsive rather than reactive.
Yeah.
And so we can understand your mother coming from that horrible, not safe place, that she would not know how to feel safe in any of her communication, have any experience around that would be your first template that you learn. So he could see the face, which was probably a face of defensiveness or fear or all of the above, and the safety within which the relationship that you and he had allowed the face to go away. You could respond in different ways.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It is reactive. I think the face was reactive. I think my mother reacted.
Mhm.
She was very big because of, her experiences, and that's understood. You know, you and this mental health awareness really didn't exist, when she needed it most.
Mhm.
I just interviewed Bill a couple weeks ago, my first Holocaust survivor. I've been doing that series I told you about for a little while, but I
Yes.
finally had a Holocaust survivor who is, I think she just turned 81, and she is going to therapy now. And she was so honest, and she said, man, I wish I hadn't been so stubborn for so many years, of avoiding it. But I have always said I wish both of my parents, but we didn't know that. Nobody spoke about it. Nobody knew how to help people at
No,
that time.
it wasn't really wasn't looked on the way it is now. Back then, you had to be really struggling or have a problem or have something wrong with you to go to a therapist. It's even a little bit there now too. When I have some folks say that I can't get my husband or my wife to come in because we just started a relationship. If we have to go to a therapist now, there must be something really wrong with our relationship. It's not true at all. My father used to do premarital counseling, and as I do when people ask for it. And it is really helpful to get some deeper communication and some strategies going for how we're going to navigate all of life's ups and downs. That is the extent of life itself. So we want to be prepared for it. Just building.
I've had partners say they wouldn't go to therapy. It's an interesting thing because it is only helpful. I was shocked because I looked this up about mental health awareness. I had no idea it started 75 years ago. Mental Health Awareness Month.
I didn't know that either. Really?
1949. Wow. It created by something called Mental Health America. Yeah, I looked that up yesterday, I think.
Might have had a different meaning back then than it does now, yeah. I'm sure. Because that, I think, was about the time that they started closing up all the mental institutions. And now we have the streets as a place of basically mental institutions.
Well, it's such a conversation that we need to talk about mental health awareness. There's, so many people who struggle.
Depression. Yeah, it's physical well-being too, because my underlying beliefs go to my thoughts, and my thoughts go to my feelings. My feelings create neurochemical releases that, in stressful cases, include norepinephrine, cortisol, co-cortisoids, adrenaline. All of those that are great if I've got a tiger chasing me in the jungle, but terrible if I'm sitting on my couch or speaking to the person that I'm in love with and trying to get through our relationship. Those things are corrosive to our system and can lead to all kinds of stress, which includes inflammation. And inflammation is one of the major health issues of our society today. It's at the core of almost everything is inflammation.
Wow.
And that is created by our state of mental well or non-well-being.
Billy, I got to read what California guy wrote. Mr. Bumiller, you are such a calming presence.
Oh, wow. How about that?
I mean, you really are. I mean,
thank you for that.
You really are. I'm so glad we could do this. I hope to see you one of these days in person.
It's my turn. I've got to come. I want to bring my son and come out to New York and visit.
Oh, please do. Please do. Has he been?
No, he hasn't. He hasn't really been anywhere except to Mammoth. We ski every year a couple times. And he's been to, I take that back. He's been to Ohio. My sister-in-law and the family vacations there. So we've been going there for a couple of years since he was a little boy. Up on Lake Michigan, I guess it is, or Lake Erie.
Nice. So text me a picture of him, because he sent me one. I think he was 13, and the last one I've seen. So because I just saw the picture of us on the beach that I was looking at. Oh, yeah. I meant to wait. I was going to show this because I found this. I think this is from that Italy show.
That's us. Yeah, that's us. Yeah, wow. Yeah.
What a cast.
Look how beautiful Peggy looks. She's
Yeah,
stunning, isn't she?
she really is.
Yeah, and I look like I'm 10 years old. Look at me. Look like I'm in high school.
You do. No scruff whatsoever.
Clean shaven.
So good to see you, my friend.
It's great to see you too, Alan. Good speaking with you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Have a great evening.
Ciao.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. Always appreciate you tuning in. Thank you to Bill Bumiller for spending the hour with us. Bill's website is up on my YouTube page. You can click down below if you want to learn more about his practice. We have a busy week next week, starting on Tuesday, when another mental health professional, psychoanalyst, Brian Spatulnik, joins me. Brian brings a wealth of expertise and compassion to the table, delving into the most pressing issues facing the LGBTQ plus community. On Wednesday, Kevin Spiritus will be here to talk about the final season of After Forever. And on Thursday, we have a tribute to Marge Doucet. And on Friday, we'll celebrate Mother's Day with Caitlin and Jordi Villasuso. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you liked today's episode, please click the like button. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do so down below. Turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. And don't forget, if you'd like to stream audio versions, just search The Locker Room on your favorite streaming platform. Have a great weekend, everybody. I will see you next week. And as always, please stay safe.